Good afternoon. My name is Victor Gomez, and I would like to about the Christian heritage for this discussion and in reference of my research paper, the early Christianity in early Texas prior and after the Mexican-American War. There was quite a few questions that I could have come up with, but in this particular case, the questions that I had was, how did Christianity support Texas in the spread of religion? And another question that I had was Christianity in early Texas prior and after the Mexican American War. And what was Mexico's mindset after losing the war and the manifest destiny outcome? This created quite a few struggles within my research because I wanted to just talk about the Mexican American War, but in this case, it was very interested an interesting topic to talk about, but we had to narrow it down into Christianity. And so the early Christianity, or Christianity in early Texas, prior and after the Mexican American War, created quite a few questions that my thesis is based on. So early European settlers called Texas a rough country, as many survived ordeals from weather to natives and built institutions in hopes of advancing civilization. Spanish activity in the area was motivated by two powerful forces, deeply rooted in Spain's history and social structure: spreading Christianity and acquiring wealth. Religion played a decisive role, with many ordinary men and women who struggled with the conditions they faced and conformed to many customs they knew. And Spanish culture in what became the state of Texas would be based primarily on, filtered through the Mexican culture. This was very distinct and dynamic culture tradition that derived only partly from Spain. And so the basis of the knowledge of my research was particularly because Mexico had laid claims to Texas. And so they were already settling in Texas, creating their spread of Christianity, which was in this case Catholics. And so while the Anglo settlers had Protestant based out of their views, and it was just a spread of Christianity around Texas, of trying to lay the basis of who's going to lay claim to Texas. And in this case, Mexico had laid claim first. And so the struggle that I had was when Manifest Destiny came about, my very first question was, what if Manifest Destiny was never created? What if Mexico still had claim to Texas? What would be the outcome of Texas today? Would Mexico have total control of Texas? Would they have total control of California? Because once they went to war with the United States, the Mexican-American War, they were not prepared. The government was already in flux of what they wanted to do. Half of them were pro-war, half of them was not. Christianity laid a strong base for the Mexicans, in this case Catholicism. And while they were trying to settle into Texas and trying to derive from their views, trying to make from their cases and trying to set their government, that's how the Anglo settlers kind of revolted and basically started off with the Mexican-American War. And basically they were thrust into the Mexican-American War and eventually losing. And so in this case, the views that I have is the mindset that the Mexicans had in reference to the Christianity now is just a struggle, because now they have to go back. Either do we follow Catholic, do we follow Protestant? And so that's what laid a little bit of the war after the Mexican-American War, because it kind of put them in a state of struggle. And so losing a lot of land from Texas, California, Arizona, and everything that they had after Manifest Destiny had kicked in, that is what the basis of the spread of Christianity and what was the outcome of Mexican-American War after, because it was already spread in Texas. And so I kind of focused more about how the early start of Texas, it kind of captivated that and kind of grew into it. So one of the books that I have researched is about Withnow. Robert Withnow was a Rough Country: How Texas Became America's Powerful Bible Belt State. And see, Withnow mentions the first European settlers in the area would become Texas had termed it rough country because it's a difficult terrain. And so to survive, the early settlers erected churches and schools that were built. And so it was, he kind of explains that Texas has become a conservative state, mostly influential in shaping the nation's culture, values, and politics, which shape the United States today. And they embrace religion through their daily lives, considering that Texas had not been a state for less than a decade, and it was doing well in founding churches. Nearly all churches were affiliated with Southern denominations. And so, with 173 churches, Methodists were by far a represented denomination and accounted for half of the churches in Texas in 1850. So that was kind of the struggle that I would like to present of when Mexicans were trying to control Texas and spreading Catholicism. And so that's part of my research that I would like to speak about. I know it's kind of, I went back and forth, but I hope that that you can kind of gain a little bit of the knowledge that I've gained in reference to what I would like to speak about. Thank you.